אז השלב הבא זה, יש לנו פה, היה לנו את הכבוד הגדול, שפרופסור טאקי, פרופסור טאקי סארנטאקיס, בעצם מקנדה, הוא הסכים, בהתחלה חשבנו שהוא יבוא לכנס, בסופו של דבר הוא לא יכול להגיע לכנס, אבל הוא כן הקליט פתיחה בשבילנו, הרצאה בנושא. אז מאוד שמחנו שהוא בעצם הסכים לתת את הרצאת הפתיחה. הוא לא יכול להגיע פיזית, אבל אנחנו נשמע הקלטה. לאחר שההקלטה, אנחנו בעצם שאלנו אותו, הוא עשה את ההקלטה בלייב ביחד איתנו. לאחר שהוא עשה את ההקלטה, אנחנו שאלנו אותו כמה שאלות, אז גם את השאלות אני אציג, ואז נציג גם את התשובות שלו.
Thank you so much for your very kind invitation today this morning. Very sorry I can't join you in person, but I hope one day that we'll be there at your center to be able to talk about public service and public servants. Public service and public servants around the world, we have the same challenges everywhere. So it's really, really important that we connect across countries, across boundaries, across jurisdictions, because basically, I think most governments do the same 4, 5, 6 things over and over again. I think we protect our citizens from harm. I think we legislate. I think we regulate. We do a little bit of economic policy, a little bit of social policy. And at the end of the day, we try to move our society forward. So I think the fact that you're actually asking outsiders and convening to talk about these issues are really, really important. You asked me to speak a little bit about kind of public servants today and how we attract them, maybe what kind of skills they need, maybe how we keep them, etc. I'm going to start a little bit, maybe a little philosophical, because I think if we're going to be talking about kind of public servants today and public service vis-a-vis what we've historically had, I think it's really important to make some distinctions between our time and the time before us, and maybe a little bit looking forward. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 2 L's and 2 S's. The 2 L's are local and linear, and the 2 S's are speed and scale. I'm going to spend a few minutes on each because I think it's really important for us to understand these things. So if you go back prior to our time, our time maybe could be 10 years, maybe we've been in the public service 20 years, 25 years. I think the biggest differences between us and our public servants in the past, and also our societies in the past, were that our lives tended to be local and linear. So I'm going to spend a moment on local. What does local mean? Local means your world, it was the world around you. It was your friends, it was your relatives, it was your neighbors, it was your national jurisdiction, it was your community. And so when you're local, there's an aspect of trust that is already kind of pre-built into being local. And I'm not sure we have that anymore. Our world is not local. We know that our world is global. We know that our world, everybody, about half the planet is already connected with through the internet. So it's really important that we understand that public service is no longer local. It's no longer kind of looking at what you have and looking down. It's looking around, and it is looking forward. So that's kind of number 1. The second L is linear. And linear, for most of humanity, we would do one thing, then another thing, then a third thing, then a fourth thing. There was a type of a sequence in our society. And I think that very much was public service and public servants. We would take something, we would apply a given set of rules, we would do A, then we would do B, then we would do C, and it was nice and structured and ordered. That's not the case anymore. Our lives are no longer linear. Our lives, everything is happening at once. Everything is compressed into this moment. There is no more A, B, and C. And a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of public service is based on A, B, and C. So it's critical, I think, that public servants today aren't the type of people who are attracted to a linearity, because there's a concurrence in our society, in our world, that a linearity and a linearity mindset will not serve well. So those are the two L's. Now maybe spend a moment on the two S's. And the two S's are speed and scale. First with speed. Our world is fast, and it is the fastest it has ever been in human history. But more importantly, today is the slowest day of the rest of your life. The internet will never get slower. Broadband will never get slower. Wi-Fi will never get slower. Microprocessors will not get slower. Today is the slowest day of the rest of your life. And again, that challenges public servants in public service, because historically, public servants have been trained with the notion that you have to be careful, you have to be slow, you have to make sure that everything is absolutely perfect, and then you go forward. If you are waiting in 2025 or in the future for something to be absolutely perfect before you get it out, you're going to be absolutely wrong instead of being absolutely perfect. So public servants today need to be infused with the notion of speed. And then the last S is scale. Scale is, it's remarkable when you think about it. The state used to be basically the only entity in society that could do scale well. It was the entity in society that could say, okay, we're the only ones that can deal with 10 million people. We're the only ones that can deal with 40 million people, 50 million people, 300 million people. That's not true anymore. Little kids in their basement, if they're connected to the internet, they can do scale. They can get things done all over the world. And when we talk about scale in government, I think we're the ones that are having challenges with scale. Facebook, Amazon, Google, 50 million people, that's nothing for them. 1 billion people is nothing for some of those companies. They're like, bring us languages, bring us, 200 countries, bring us anything you want. So we do scale. And so the challenge for public servants is to think about scale. How can I do this in a broader, more impactful way? So now we'll get to kind of talking a little bit about what public servants today need to have, a few characteristics vis-a-vis public servants yesterday. Kind of get to your question a little more directly. How do you attract people like this? How do you keep people like this? I think there's generally two models in the world. The first is what I call the monastic model. And that's the model that I work in as an official in the government of Canada. A monastic model is you go to school, you get a master's degree, you join the public service when you're 23 or 24 or 25, or in my case, 29, because I was dumb enough to be doing a PhD. And then you stay there. And that's kind of model number one, which is you learn the system, you get mentored by elders, so to speak, you become indoctrinated with good things like how to serve the public, how to be loyal, how to be trustworthy, what it means to be a public servant, etc. The second model is more of the in and out. And that's the model where you come into government for a period, you do something specific, and then you leave the government. I'm not going to say that one model is better than the other, but I think that both models have their challenges. The first challenge with the monastic model is that you come into government, and over time, the leaders are leaders with kind of mindsets from 10 years ago, from 15 years ago. and they don't react as quickly to the world because bureaucracies are, by definition, bureaucracies are a little bit insulated from the rest of the world. They have their own rules, their own processes, their own system. The second system, the kind of the revolving model, the in and out coming in for a period of time, that also has its challenges because public service, there's an ethos that you need for public service, which is, this isn't about me. This isn't about pay. This isn't about, my private gain. This is about serving the public. This is about putting my own interests aside and serving not a market or a subservient of a market or increasing market share or increasing market capitalization. It's about serving the totality of the population in any country, big country, small country, etc. So they both have their challenges. I think, as I think about this more and more, I think the only big advantage that the public sector has over the private sector in this respect is the notion of mission. And we have missions in the in the public sector that you simply cannot get in the private sector. So I think we have to start talking about mission more than we do. We can't compete on pay. We cannot compete outside of the security world. We cannot compete on people having the latest technology, on people having absolute cutting edge systems and tools. In fact, in the public sector, often we are using dated tools. There are a lot of public services across the world that think that Excel is high tech. And that's because they're still kind of stuck in the late 90s. The rest of the world, the private sector, it uses tools, it uses AI, it understands data, it understands digital. Soon it will understand quantum much faster than the public sector does. So it is absolutely critical that we compete on things that we can compete on. And again, I think the only thing we can compete on is mission. Mission, how do you serve your fellow citizens? How do you serve your country? Are you a teacher? Are you a doctor? Are you somebody that's designing programs? Are you somebody that's protecting your financial system? Are you protecting your country against attacks, whether they're physical attacks or cyber attacks? It is absolutely critical that public servants understand that public service is not about paperwork. It's not about process. It is a privilege to be a public servant. And we have to start treating it we have to start ascribing it the value that it's supposed to have, which is the public service. And I like to think of the public service as a guardian in society. And when you think of the public service as a guardian in society, I think you're better aligned with attracting the right kind of people. Because if you look around the globe today, there's almost nothing but bad news for as far as the eye can see. There's either too much water, or too little water, it's too hot, populations are migrated, on and on, misinformation, deep fakes, on populism, on and on and on and on, problems. In the old days, the public service would hire people and say, here's this problem, here's that problem, here's this other problem. Well, by the time you've hired them, the problem in the world has already moved on. So we need to think of public servants as people that can adapt quickly. We need to think of public servants as people that are resilient. We need to think of public servants as people that help their countries navigate uncertainty. So mission is one. The other perennial one is pay, and it's very, very challenging for the public sector to compete on pay with the private sector. In fact, I don't think we should be competing on pay with the public and the private sector. If you have skills that are world-class, very, very tiny percentage of the population have those skills and can deploy those skills, it's very unlikely that you can go to somebody and say, we're going to pay you X, when the private sector is willing to pay you 10X. In Canada, we have a group of people who work at an organization called the Canadian Security Establishment, and those people deal with cyber threats to the government of Canada. Virtually any of those people could walk out the door and make 10 times the amount of money that they do make in the government of Canada. But they don't. And the reason why they don't, on the whole, is because they're there for mission. They are there to protect their citizens. They are there to do something important. So that's basically what I would say. I think that we have to reframe the public service as number one. We have to start thinking that the public service is different than what it was in the past, because the world is different than what it was in the past. And we need people that have a more agile, a more resilient mindset. The second thing is, I think the only thing that we can truly, truly compete on, and it's something that nobody else has, which is mission. And then the third thing is to understand that while our tools have changed, the public service began, since the time we crawled out of caves, as a guardian institution, and we remain a guardian institution today. But what it means to be a guardian in 2025 is different than what it meant in 1975 and different than what it meant in 1950. I think the public service has to meet the challenges of its times, just like our predecessors and in the public service across countries and across time met the challenges of their times. And I think if we flip our mindset a little bit and understand that we're here to serve, we're here to protect, we're here to interact and save or help our societies navigate challenge, I think we're able to. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope these remarks were a little bit helpful. I think it's important every once in a while to take a concrete question and step back and think about it a little bit more theoretically, maybe a little bit more philosophically, because the mindset is what helps us move forward rather than the particular areas. Thank you again.
טוב, אז מה ששכחתי לעשות לפני שהוא התחיל זה להציג מיהו, באיזו טעות שלי. טאקי סארנטאקיס הוא נשיא בית הספר לשירות הציבורי של קנדה. לפני שהוא נכנס לתפקיד בשנת 2018, הוא כיהן כמזכיר משנה של מועצת האוצר של קנדה, ולפני כן כסגן שר המדיניות והתקשורת בתשתיות קנדה. בשנת 2011 הוא קיבל פרס, הוא ענק לו פרס המצוינות של שירות ציבור של קנדה במדיניות ציבורית, ובשנת 2013 הוא זכה בדיימנד ג'ובלי מדל של המלכה אליזבת השנייה. לפני שהצטרף לממשל הפדרלי, מר סארנטאקיס, קשה לי להגיד, סליחה, היה דוקטורנט באוניברסיטת טורונטו, הוא בעל תואר ראשון ושני מאוניברסיטת יורק בטורונטו. עכשיו, שאלנו אותו 3 שאלות. אז אני אקריא לכם קודם כל את השאלה הראשונה. ביקשנו מטאקי, תספר לנו על מודלים של גיוס טלנטים לשירות המדינה לתקופה קצרה, ודרכים נוספות לגיוס עובדים לשירות המדינה.
I think it's really important that if we are bringing people in for temporary kind of tours of duty, that we think about them in two very distinct ways. I think the first is if you're bringing in an expert for a highly specialized, highly specific thing for a purpose, I think it should be very clear that that person is temporary, that person is here for something that has a start and a finish and an outcome. And I think that historically we have done that in governments in the public sector through contracting, but I think you can also do it kind of through the staffing process if you're very clear that this is kind of a finite, mission-driven way to do something. The second general way to bring people in and not have them kind of think that they're losing something in terms of salary and the like is to bring them in right after school. They gain valuable experience. They learn how the public sector works. If they're primarily interested in the private sector over time, there's very few things that the public sector doesn't touch, whether it's laws, regulations, procurement rules. Kind of working in a public service in an early part of your career will serve you well for the rest of your life. There it is. It's not a sacrifice, so to speak, at the beginning of your career. Think of it as a foundation. Think of it as a building block. What happens, though, often is people who are entering the public service have to adopt to the public service and adapt to the public service. And the public service is a big organization, just like any other big organizations. It has rules, processes, and typically speaking, kind of the junior people do junior people type work. So it's incumbent on us that if we have people who are coming to government for kind of a tour of duty, that we actually give them meaningful, impactful work so that maybe they come back one day. Because bright young people straight out of school, they are not interested in filling out forms. They're not interested in doing, a 3, 4, 5-year kind of apprenticeship before they get to do anything meaningful, which is often the way that we organize our public service.
מה דעתך על המתח שקיים בין השרים לבין הפקידות המקצועית, ומה צריך לעשות בשביל לשפר את המצב?
I think the tensions between politically elected officials and kind of the public service, I think they're real as we speak here in 2024. And I think they're more acute and more intense than they have been perhaps in previous generations. The way I like to think about this is that each side, the elected official and kind of the professional public servant, they have to respect each other's political space, their institutional space. And what I mean by that is both entities are legitimate and both entities have a role to play. But when the public servant thinks that the politician is illegitimate, or that where the politician thinks that the professional public servant is illegitimate, then the relationship doesn't work. And I think it's really incumbent on public servants to understand we're not here to make decisions. People are elected and their job is to make decisions. If we want to make decisions, we should run for office and we should get a mandate from our fellow citizens like our politicians have. On the other hand, politicians need to understand that, slogans during campaigns, once you get into government, there's a lot more nuance. There is a lot more perspective you need. There are a lot more trade-offs that need to be made. And if you rely on the people who work in the professional public service for that input, for that perspective, for that context, you will be better served. Because I like to quote an economist, I think it was Thomas Sewell, who said, there are no solutions in public policy. There are only trade-offs. And our political masters all around the world, they're amazingly good at proposing solutions. But it is only the public servants, if they're doing their job well, and if they're skilled and if they're knowledgeable, that can tell you, yes, minister, you can do this. But you need to know before you decide, here are the trade-offs. The decision is yours, but I'm here to help you with the context and the facts. So if both sides respect the other side's institutional space, things work brilliantly. If either side does not respect the institutional space of the other, it's just going to be frustration.
Last question. שאלה אחרונה, סליחה, אני באנגלית. מה קורה לאיכות כוח העבודה בשירות הציבורי?
I actually think, so I'll split that a little bit. What I'll say is the people who we can hire are far more talented, far more capable than I was at their age. I'm not sure we're attracting the right ones. I think we're filtering for things like, how do we cooperate? How do we make sure that, you know, this person fits into our culture? So I think we actually have the wrong filters. And fast forwarding to kind of people my age, I think a lot of the public service around the world above a certain age, and I include myself too, I think we're legacy public servants. I think that a lot of the problems, a lot of the challenges that we see in basic day-to-day things, like, you know, how do you issue a passport? How do you make sure that, you know, when you file a tax return, it's not a difficult situation? When a parent wants, when a parent needs old age security payments or pensions or whatever, a lot of our systems are old and broken and antiquated. And I think the generation coming up, those aren't challenges for them. So part of the issue is, how do we bubble up those great, young, and talented people faster than we do today?
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I've learned a lot, including that Excel is not cutting edge anymore. And I really want to thank you very much for speaking.
That's my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation, and hope to see you again one day.